I think I always felt like I was bad at running because my mindset was always, if you're slow, then you're a bad runner and you can't run and you need to get better. I had a little cry in the car because I was like, this is like, it's here. I can't believe I have to run a marathon tomorrow. I think it really inspires you outside of running as well, that you can do hard things, because if you can run a marathon, you can dedicate all of that time. You can be on your feet and carry your body through 42 kilometers, no matter what time you do it in. You can literally do anything. I even threw away my Manchester medal because I was so convinced that I wasn't going to run. So I'm Emily. I'm a slower runner and a beginner runner. That's kind of how I portray myself online anyway. And I've basically been making content online now for about 10 months. And I make content around embracing your slower pace and just giving it a go and not being too scared, I guess. And that's kind of me in a nutshell.
It's mad to say that it's been 10 months that you've been making content for, because if you look at your following now, I mean, that's 10,000 followers a month and some. When you posted that first video, when you started that journey online, did you ever think that we'd be at this point so quickly?
No. Honestly,
it's mad.
I think I was just looking for a bit of validation when I started posting at first, because I actually started posting on TikTok. I was out in the countryside and I just thought, I'm just going to go and try and start running again. And then I posted some screenshots of my pace online as like a carousel, and that TikTok blew up, and there was just so many of the people that were like, oh, this is me, I'm in the exact same situation as well. And then I kind of thought, okay, there's something behind this, there's more to this, and just started posting all of my runs as I went out, and it kind of grew from there. And then I moved over to Instagram, and that's kind of my main platform at the minute. But yeah, it's been a bit mad.
You say again there, so have you had kind of this in and out of relationship with running? Why did you stop, and kind of why did you start again, I guess?
Yeah, I've never had the best relationship with running in general. I think it stemmed from school, to be honest.
Yeah.
Where it was very much like you felt as if you needed to be the best, and teachers had favourites, and in PE and stuff like that. And I was never massively athletic at any sport. And running was just something I found to be a bit of a slog. I just assumed you just ran as fast as you could, and if you couldn't keep up with everybody else, then there's something wrong with you. So I ran a bit in school, but not a lot. And then in 2019, a couple of my friends, I think we were just drunk one night, and I feel like that's when you start, I don't know, just setting weird challenges with your friends. And we were like, should we just run a half marathon? Like, it can't be that hard. So 3 of us signed up to do the Manchester Half Marathon, and one of my friends, who was my housemate at the time, was like, he's a great runner. I think like he just naturally is built for running. He's run for quite a while as well, so he's kind of got all those miles like stacked up. So running with him was very humbling on kind of like all of our training runs. But yeah, I didn't find the half marathon training particularly fun. I didn't know how to train at that point either. I wasn't using any sort of training plan. I think I just pulled like a PDF off Google and was like, this is great, I'll just use this. And I think we trained from April, and then the actual half was in October. And then the half itself was just, it felt incredibly hard. And I know that a half marathon is a crazy distance, like it's far. But just the whole like 2 hours 30 that I was out, I don't think at one point I was thinking, oh, this is actually quite fun. Right. And it was just because I didn't know how to train, and I didn't understand that you don't need to run super, super fast for every single run that you do, and there's different types of training runs. So it was a real learning curve for me. After that, I remember saying, I'm never going to do a half marathon again. I'm probably never going to run again. And then I didn't really run again properly until last spring. I even threw away my Manchester medal because I was so convinced that I wasn't going to run, which I do regret now because I would have had an extra medal. But yeah, it just really put me off the whole experience. I just thought, well, running's not for me then, so I'm not going to do it anymore.
Do you think that, I was watching some of your reels a couple of days ago just to kind of get ready for this, and I saw one quote on one of the reels which was, slow does not equate to bad. And I think that's like a very important message. But do you think it is kind of like how you're brought up maybe through school that kind of makes you think that is the case initially? And it's like people saying like, no, like if you want to run slower, run slower. There's nothing bad about running slower. Do you think that's kind of where that message stems from?
Definitely for me, yeah. I think it's just with school in general, it feels like there's always a right and a wrong way to do things, and if you do something a bit differently, it's not there's no like compromise, I guess. You're kind of looked down on. Um so yeah, I definitely feel, and I mean, it's different for every school, but for me there was no education around how to actually run. It was just, we're doing cross country today, you've got to go outside and run for 45 minutes. And being lapped by loads of people is really demoralizing, especially when you're a kid as well, and like everything feels like the end of the world. And you just feel like everyone's laughing at you way more than you do when you mature and you realize actually nobody is, and it's, it's not a big deal. But yeah, I think through school, for me, that was definitely the case, especially when you're not super athletic, you're not in all the sports teams. The teachers don't really know you, and I feel like they do kind of favourite the top performers in the class, and that was my experience anyway.
So what was the gear shift? What was the mind shift to going from throwing away your Manchester medal to, I'm gonna give this another crack?
Um, I think it was a bit random how it happened, because I was out in the countryside. I wanted to exercise, but the nearest gym would have to drive like 15, 20 minutes or something. And I was just like, I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to go out and go on a run. And I think the first run I did was no more than 2 or 3K. And I remember it being incredibly hard. But I downloaded an app called Runner, which is, I'm sure you've probably heard of it. It's massive in the running space at the minute. And that was just a tool that I never had when I was training for the half marathon in 2019. And I think having something that tells you what to do and takes your current pace into consideration was something that really helped me realize, oh, I don't have to be chasing these really fast paces. I can actually just take it at my own pace. And I think also as I started posting more online as well, because when I started posting on TikTok, that was basically the first time that I started running again within a few years. So I was seeing all these people that were running at a similar pace to me, and that made me a lot more comfortable with the pace that I was running at, and I felt less of a need to chase a particular pace or even a particular distance at that point. It was just about getting out again and seeing how it felt. And I think just experimenting with different paces and like running even slower than I needed to also really helped me as well, just to accept that I'm not really going out to run a particular pace. I'm doing it because I want to challenge myself to do XYZ. And then I was just having fun with it. So I started running in the April, and I booked the marathon in July. And I think it was just off the back of a good run, or I just finished a 5K training plan and I was on a bit of a high from it all. And I thought, well, I've done the half, so I need to do something that's a little bit more challenging. So I was just like, I'll just do the marathon. I think what I'd done actually was I'd put myself up for the London Marathon, but I didn't get in. And then everybody who doesn't get in gets an email being like, come to Brighton. So I was like, okay. and then I signed up for the Brighton Marathon, and that's kind of how it all started again. Yeah.
What was that moment like when you kind of realized that you're not on your own here? Like, there is this enormous community of people that have and do feel exactly the same. That must have felt pretty kind of validating in a way, that like I'm not by myself.
It was really nice. I think I always felt like I was bad at running, because my mindset was always, if you're slow, then you're a bad runner and you can't run and you need to get better. But when there was other people that were running at a similar pace to me, or people that were maybe quicker, but they didn't really care about pace as well, like it wasn't a big thing for them and they appreciated people that were running slower, it made me prioritize just getting out there to run rather than chasing particular paces. And it also meant that I think I could, it made me fall in love with running like I'd never done before, because I was able to, like, I knew that, okay, I can run and I don't have to run quick, and I'm still a runner for doing those things. And it's just a nice feeling to know that there's other people in that exact same situation as you, and you can kind of help each other along. Yeah, it was just really nice. I kind of felt like, okay, I'm actually not bad at running. It's more my mindset that needs to change. Yeah.
I think that message of if you run, you're a runner, it's something people say a lot, and I think sometimes isn't something that's necessarily put into practice. But the message, like yourself and Celina and lots of other people are sharing online, is like, that is so true. Like, if you run, no matter what your pace, no matter what your distance, no matter if you're running for 50 meters and walking for 50 meters and repeating that 10 times and that's you for the day, genuinely, if you get out there, if you put a pair of trainers on, you get out the door or onto a treadmill or whatever, you are a runner, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. And I think, I think people need to appreciate that a bit more as well, because I think it's just a mixture of, as people, we just want to be the best at things. I think that's quite a natural thing. Even if you're not a competitive person, you always want to be good at something that you're doing, or be seen to be good at something. And I think with running, it's really easy to see these really fast, like, athletes or just influencers that sport is their life, it's their job. It's easy to look at that and think, okay, I need to aim for that. But actually, you don't need to aim for that. Like, pace doesn't need to be a priority. And I think it feels like there's so many really fit people and really quick people, super strong runners, and it feels like they're the majority because that's what we see online. But in real life, the majority is people more like me rather than these incredibly fit, fast people that you see online. It's just that it's everywhere, so it's all we see. So we're in this kind of like echo chamber, and we think that we're really unfit or really bad, and it's just not the case.
I think like the message you're spreading is genuinely amazing. And yeah, like you say, you have gone, I think, quite quickly from, having a bit of a break from running, then coming back and going from just starting back up again to now going straight into a marathon. Making that decision's a big decision. Because there's a difference between saying I'm gonna do it and then like getting all the emails being like, hey, you actually are doing it. What was that like, that feeling in your stomach? Was it like, oh my god, need to get going here?
At first it was fine because it was about not a year away. It was like, 10 months away. So I was like, that's a long time away. Like, future me can deal with that. It got real when the training runs got long. So when we got into the half marathon and above, which it was like a solid 4 or 5 weeks of super long runs, and for me it takes like a whole day out of my weekend basically. So that was when it got real. And then Brighton, and I assume other marathons do this as well, Brighton do this thing where every week they just send you an email on a Monday morning as a countdown. They'd be like, 10 weeks to go. And as soon as I start on a Monday morning as well, I literally sit at my desk, get this email and just think, why have I done this? But it's a good reminder. But I was definitely nervous on the lead up. But I think that's normal. Like, I follow people that have been running for years and they still get nervous before a race. So yeah, I think it's a good thing, and you can always like translate that into excitement, I guess. Pretend that you're not nervous and you're just really, really excited.
Nerves mean that it means something. I think that's the main thing. Right, we're talking for people listening now, the Thursday after Brighton. So spoiler alert, you've done it, you've completed it, you smashed it, and you did an amazing thing on the weekend. What were you feeling like on the start line?
Start line, I actually felt good. It was before when I was in my Airbnb waiting to go, I did not feel good. I felt Like my stomach felt uneasy, which was just totally down to nerves. And the night before, I was really apprehensive, I think, and I didn't sleep very well, which I think is also a pretty normal thing. So that was the worst part, was like the night before driving down to Brighton. I had a little cry in the car because I was like, this is like, it's here. I can't believe I have to run a marathon tomorrow, which is mad because I'd done all the training. It's just quite natural to have those initial doubts, especially when you're going into like a completely new situation. So yeah, the morning was hard, but as soon as I'd got to the like race village bit and I could see all the other runners, something just calms you. I think you're that point, you're like, well, I'm here now, I'm gonna do it. And it's nice to see all the other people doing it as well, because there's such a mix of people. Like when you go to a marathon, you really appreciate that marathons aren't just for really athletic looking people. There's so many different types of people, so many different ages there. And I think that kind of settles you as well. And that's where it turned into excitement. And the vibes were really good as well. Like, there was loads of music. So yeah, I was ready to go by the time when they like, you go into your little pen and you're like walking to the start line, I was just eager to get off.
Even hearing you talk about it compared to hearing you talk about that Manchester half, like you can tell that the experiences were totally different. I think that Brighton medal is safe, I think it's fair to say.
That's not going in the bin.
That's not going anywhere. That ain't going in the recycling. But talk to me about the kind of the comparisons between the two. How different did they feel?
I think I went into the Brighton Marathon knowing that I would be able to finish the distance because I'd trained properly for it. Whereas with the Manchester one, I really didn't know what I was going into. The Manchester one was also, I think, my first ever race. So I hadn't ever done like a 10K like training race for it. Whereas with the Brighton one, I've done 4 half marathon events on the lead up to the Brighton one. So just having that race day experience is really, really valuable because you can practice all the fueling and things like that. And just what it's like to be getting up early and being in that environment, I found really, really helpful. And then I just felt so much more confident in my ability to finish it. That was obviously the running plan was a huge part of that, but also the mindset as well, because when I was doing my training, I was able to change running into something that I actually really enjoyed doing. So it was much easier for me to stick to my training plan as much as possible because I was really enjoying what I was doing. And that was literally just by slowing my pace down, was the biggest unlock of changing the mindset. Whereas in the Manchester training block, I was just exhausted after every run. So mentally, I was just not there. I didn't enjoy it. And that's why I try and say a lot on my Instagram. It's try and find something that you actually enjoy doing. Like, it doesn't even have to be running, because you're way more likely to stick to it, especially on days where you really don't want to do it. If it brings you that little bit of joy, or you know that it's going to uplift your mood for the rest of the week, you're way more likely to continue doing it rather than just forcing yourself to do something that you really don't love. So on race day for Brighton, yeah, I was just in such good spirits. I felt way more able, and I also kept telling myself all the way around, like, if you just completely take the timing out of it, you have nothing to worry about because you can finish it. Like, you could walk it if you wanted to, and it's still a marathon. So if you completely take, I need to be over that line in X amount of hours, all you're doing is just enjoying the experience, and focusing more on what's going on around you. Are you drinking enough water? Are you eating enough? Are you having fun? Do you need to listen to music? Do you know, it just, when you focus more on the experience as it is rather than the pace, I think it just completely changes the experience and it actually makes it really enjoyable. Like, I smile all the way through the marathon. My family came and loads of our friends came as well. So we saw them at loads of different points. And afterwards, they were like, you were just smiling the whole way through. And part of it was because my friend said, smile all the way through because it's scientifically proven to make things easier. So sometimes it was a little bit of a grimace and it was like just trying to get through it. But 90% of the time, the smile was genuine. And yeah, it just felt like when people talk about the runner's high feeling, like that's the feeling that I had pretty much throughout all of the marathon. And when I finished it, I felt so like happy and proud and emotional. Whereas when I finished the Manchester half, I had, I just felt exhausted. I felt like my legs hurt. I was exhausted, and I didn't feel proud of what I'd done. I felt like I should have done that quicker. Like, why have I done that so slow? So it was just two completely polar opposite experiences.
It's really funny because when you think of a marathon, if you ask someone, if someone tells you they've done a marathon, traditionally that first question is, how fast did you do it? Right? And then if you look at an ultra marathon, right, you say like, I've done a 50 miler or I've done a 50K even. There is never that question. And I don't know what the difference is, because actually mileage wise, let's say from a marathon to a 50K, it's so small. There's like 6 miles, 7 miles difference. But there's just that, like, that shift of from time to distance. And I think sometimes the marathon can maybe take a little bit from kind of the ultra world, where that isn't the first thing you should approach people with. It shouldn't just be, I've run a marathon, how fast did you do it? It should be, oh, what was your experience like? Like, did you enjoy it? What will you do another one? Do you think that's something that maybe people can take?
I think so. I mean, I was definitely, I would have, before all of this, asked people, oh, how fast did you do that? And I think it's just more out of like interest. But I think when you are slower, when someone asks you that question, I'm like, I want the world, I want the earth to swallow me up. I don't want to tell you what time I did it in, because I think it's a terrible time. Like, that's what I would have thought. When people ask me, oh, how long did it take you to do the Manchester half? And I'm there like, oh, like 2.5 hours. It makes people feel uncomfortable because we think like we're going to be judged for running it slower. But yeah, I've definitely heard that with the ultra world, that it's way less focused on timing and more just about, I don't know, I feel like apparently the vibes are just a lot better, and everyone is just there to have the experience of completing the distance rather than doing it in a particular time. But yeah, I don't like that when people ask me that, because there's still something deep inside me, I think, that is going to take a while to fully, for me to come out and be like, oh, I did it in X amount of time. I feel like you always need to but I did definitely feel like you need to kind of give a reason for why you did it at that time. Do you know what I mean? Like, oh, I was a bit tired, so, I only did it in 2.5 hours, when, like, we should just be proud that we've done the distance. But I think it just comes down to, ultimately, unfortunately, people are interested in things like pace, and I don't think that is going to change for the most part. But I'm hoping that when people watch my Instagram and they are slower runners, that they are more accepting of that pace, and they don't feel like they need to give a reason for running slow, or it is what it is. But I really want to do an ultra at some point. I've heard very good things, and apparently they're just really fun.
I was going to say Ultra Emily incoming, I think, by the way you were speaking about that.
Maybe,
yeah, I think it's going to happen. Hey, RunThrough have got some good 50Ks, so maybe one day you fancy one of them. I like the way as well that you talked about like people like coming to your Instagram and seeing your content, and then hoping that some of the things that you've gone through maybe impact them. That's got to be a weird feeling as well. Like the fact that the stuff you're putting out there is impacting people through a screen to start with, but then like in real life too, when you actually meet these people. I know you saw people out on the Brighton course that are followers of the Instagram, and we'll talk about the event you've got coming up with RunThrough as well. When you meet these people in real life, is that odd? Is it like, oh, what I'm putting out is actually helping people here?
Yeah, it is. It's funny because it's like one thing getting like a lovely message and saying you've really inspired me to sign up for like my first 5K or for a half marathon is really cool to see that in writing. But then when you actually have people coming up to you and they want to take the time out of their big event like the Brighton Marathon to come up to you and tell you how much you help them it's a weird experience, but in like the best way. Because I think I met maybe over 10 people who were actually during the run, and there was one woman who said that I've been posting a lot about run walking and how if you want to walk during a race, that's absolutely fine and you shouldn't feel ashamed for it, and that's how I got through the Brighton Marathon. But there was one woman who came up to me just before the half marathon, and she'd said something along the lines of oh, you're the Jeffing method, I've been doing that and it's been getting me through the training, so like thank you so much. And then she kind of went off, and I just had a little this is the weirdest experience ever, and it's like it is really emotional, especially when you're in such a high emotion environment. It was really cool, and to have people actually coming up to you and telling you that, and wanting you to know what you've done for them is a really really nice experience, because it's kind of the reason that I've done it in the first place. I wanted someone to tell me that my pace was fine just as it is when I was first running. Like if I'd have known that in 2019, who knows where I'd be now in, like, you know, in the running space. I might, things would be very different. I'd probably been running for years and love it more. So yeah, it's really cool, and it makes me want to continue what I'm doing, because obviously there's like the numbers that you see on Instagram and stuff, but that's cool, obviously, to imagine, okay, there's 100,000 people following, like I could fill a stadium, but it's just numbers. There comes a point where all the nice messages that people send, and when you meet people, it's so much more valuable than the likes and the followers and all of that stuff. So it's really, really cool.
And that's that everyday real life interaction, which hopefully you'll be getting a lot of in Hyde Park on the 25th of May. Just talk about what's happening there on that day.
So myself and Celina Stephenson, are going to be collaborating with RunThrough on the 25th of May in Hyde Park for a 5k and a 10k event. We're going to be doing the 10k event, and we've basically invited a bunch of our followers and friends to come down and run with us, whether you want to do the 5k or the 10k. It's totally up to you, but yeah, we're super excited. We're going to have a little gathering before, I think, and meet everyone and just get the nerves away, because it's always nerve-wracking when you have an event like that. So I think just having a nice group of us will be really, really nice. And then we're gonna have a little run through the park, and hopefully it will be super sunny. And yeah, really, really excited for it. It's going to be the first. I mean, Celina has the run club, and I've kind of paced for her, but it's going to be one of my kind of like first events like that. So I'm super excited.
And there are some discount codes for that as well, which I'll pop in the description of this episode. So if you want to go and enter, and if you want to come down, then you can go and do that. Emily, like, I feel like you're best to talk about this because you've been through it. Like, somebody listening to this right now and they're worrying about their pace, they're stressing about the fact that, you know, they don't want to put their runs online, which, by the way, you don't have to if you don't want to. Like, but they're just kind of stressing about, like, telling people that they're running because they're going to get these questions, and they're going to get asked how fast are they going, or what is their next goal, or whatever. What would you say to them? Like, how would you inspire them, I guess, to get going and kind of forget about those things?
I'd say, first of all, it is hard to put yourself out there when your pace isn't where you want it to be or where you think it should be. Like, it takes a lot of courage, I think, to accept your pace as it is, because it can be such a competitive space. But I think I would say focus more on why you run. Like, do you genuinely enjoy running, pace aside? And if you do, then pace is only a really small part of running. And yeah, I always say that a slow run doesn't mean that it was a bad run. It should be more about how you feel during the run. If you go out and did a 5k and it was the slowest 5k that you've ever done, and you walked half of it but you loved it, then that's the good run, and that is the feeling that you should chase, not chasing a particular pace because you feel like you need to have that pace to fit in. Yeah, it does take time though. Like it took me a long time to accept it, and that is also fine. Like I think it's normal to feel that way when online we see all these super fast people, but it's also important to remember that they are a minority of the population, and that the majority of us are just kind of everyday runners that aren't super athletic, and that doesn't mean that, you know, we shouldn't be running and that we're bad runners. It's just a different kind of runner, I guess.
We'll finish with this, and it feels quite apt to finish with this because we'll talk about the finish. What was it like crossing the line at the Brighton Marathon? How did that feel for you to achieve the goal and kind of be there at the finish line with that medal around your neck?
It was surreal. It was really surreal. It's just something that you spend. I mean, I think the training plan was 3 months long, but for me, it was more like a 10-month thing in the lead up. And you've put so much time and effort in, and tears and a lot of sweat, that when you finish it, it's just this. But it's just I can't actually describe how it feels. I think you just have to do it, which is, you know, it's a big thing to say. You've got to do it, but it's just the best feeling. It's just, you just feel so proud of what you've done, and knowing that, like, because I enjoyed the experience, it just felt like the best way that it could have ended as part of my marathon journey. Yeah, you just feel so proud of all the hard work that you've done. I think it really inspires you outside of running as well, that you can do hard things, because if you can run a marathon, you can dedicate all of that time. You can be on your feet and carry your body through 42 kilometers, no matter what time you do it in. You can literally do anything, and that's something that's running has helped me outside of any sort of fitness, with, you know, things like work or social situations, and just knowing that you can throw yourselves into things and do it. And it's a great thing it's a great mindset to unlock when you're able to do that.